So to the audience, like, pretend it's different.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I still have to come up with a hook, but today I'm going to persuade you why you should sign with your deaf child. As hearing parents of deaf children, you'll have to make some decisions about how you'll raise your child. Do I give them a cochlear? Do I sign with them? Do I raise them orally? And I'm here to tell you that you should definitely sign with them. The reason that I can talk to you about this today is because I performed research, but I also have personal experience with the deaf community, with those who sign and those who are oral and those who are anywhere in between. The three main reasons that you should sign with your deaf child are for the visual nature of the language, the communication, the statistical proof of the communication benefits, and the unique culture that comes with it. The first reason that, I just don't want to move from the slide. The first reason that you should sign with your child is because it's a visually based language. Sign language actually is a lot like a pantomiming. LifePrint is an online, explain what LifePrint is, I need to practice that. That defines sign language as a visually based language on naturally evolved gestures and non-manual markers like facial expressions and body movements. My fluency, as well as checking with the Picture Plus Dictionary, which is an American Sign Language dictionary, helps me demonstrate the visual nature. For example, if I were to demonstrate to you that I had a question, how would I express that with my body? I'd probably lean in a little bit and scrunch my eyebrows, and that's the same motion that you do when you're signing. Likewise, if you were trying to pantomime with someone that you wanted to read a book, how would you act that out? And that's the sign for book. Or think about the flagpole up in front of Ayers or outside of your high school at home. How would you pantomime the flagpole to someone? You'd have the ground and the flagpole and the flag. And it's the same idea in sign language. This is the same for a lot of adjectives and other verbs. Like something's big, I would expand my whole body, and even eventually my face. And likewise, if I wanted to eat or if I wanted to dance, it's demonstrating that with your entire body. This visual nature of the language makes it easy for signing individuals to communicate with those who don't sign through pantomiming and pointing and other body language. Now that you know about the visual benefits of sign language, it's important you know that it's been statistically proven to be a better form of communication as well. In 1982, the Journal of American Sign Language Studies had studied two groups of 5-year-olds, and they found that the group of 5-year-olds with hearing loss that signed and the group of 5-year-olds with hearing loss who were oral, the group who signed had a larger vocabulary by more than 400 words on average. Likewise, it was found that in a classroom in 2008 by the First Language Journal that students with hearing loss who communicated through sign language communicated information more accurately and more reliably than those who communicated it orally. And then thirdly, in 1992, the Journal of Sign Language Studies found that in groups of people with hearing loss who use sign language, they report that they have higher grades, higher incomes, and higher levels of self-satisfaction than those who communicate through their cochlear implants. This source of self-satisfaction is more than likely found in their involvement with the deaf community. There's a difference in the capital D deaf community and the state of being deaf, which is the lowercase d. The 1988 book, Deaf in America, defines this difference as the capital D deaf is involvement within the deaf community, using sign language and experiencing life as a deaf individual with pride, whereas the lowercase d deaf is simply the medical state of less than full hearing. There are key characteristics of the capital D deaf culture, just like any other language group, that make it unique. The 2017 book, Deaf Culture by Irene Lee, gives 3 main characteristics. The first one is that they use sign language to communicate more than anything. They are not oral and they don't rely on their cochlear implants, but they take pride in their sign language. The second is that they view deafness as a positive. They view it as a good thing. It's just a different life experience, and they're no different than you and I. And the third thing is they communicate with deaf straightness. This is a loving term for extreme openness in conversation. For example, I could ask you who you were with last night and what you ate for breakfast, and nothing's too personal or too weird in the deaf community. Whereas I could only ask you certain questions as a hearing individual without getting funny looks. This unique culture is what brings them that higher level of self-satisfaction. In a predominantly hearing world, your child is more than likely going to feel excluded at some point, and this capital D deaf community offers them a perfect place to feel at home. In summary, sign language is the best communication option for your deaf child because of its visual nature, its statistical proof, and the community that it offers. 2 great local resources are the Knoxville Center of the Deaf and the Tennessee School for the Deaf, both within a short drive of our meeting here today. and I encourage you to get involved with both of them as time goes on. But more than anything, I want to teach you one sign before we go home today. That way you can begin signing for your child as soon as possible. Because right now they're in this phase called the prelingual phase. Because unlike hearing children, they have no exposure to any form of communication right now. They can't hear the sounds of the TV or the dishwasher. So until you begin signing, your child is prelingual. And it's been statistically found by that same 1992 journal that the longer they're in this prelingual phase, the longer they will be at a disadvantage. So to teach you the sign today, I'm going to teach you how to say finished. And you're going to take your two palms, and there's a picture of it. Your two open palms, and you shake them once. If you're excited or something is really over, you can do multiple. But typically, if they're done eating or done sleeping, it's just one shake. And with that, I want to thank you and encourage you to sign with your child. And now I am.
Okay, so just start at the beginning, and I'll just let you go.
Okay. Today, I'm going to talk to you about why you should sign with your deaf child. As hearing parents of deaf children, you're going to face decisions that other hearing parents won't have to make. Like, do I give them a cochlear implant? Do I send them to an oral education? Do I sign with them? I'm here to tell you from my personal experience as someone involved in the deaf community, with friends who fall everywhere on that spectrum.
With friends who fall everywhere on that spectrum.
And who has performed research on this topic, that signing with your child is the best form of communication for them. The 3 reasons that you should sign with your child are the visual nature of the language, the statistical proof, and the community that comes with signing. The first reason that you should sign with your child...
The first reason that you should sign with your child... Keep going, say it again.
The first reason that you should sign with your child is because it is a visually based language. It's essentially pantomiming and charades. LivePrint, which is a explanation, defines sign language as a visually based language on naturally evolved gestures and non-manual markers, like shoulder movements and facial expressions. My fluency, as well as checking with the Picture Plus Dictionary, which is an American Sign Language dictionary, lets me demonstrate this to you. If you were to ask someone a question, how would you present your body language? You would probably lean in a little bit and scrunch your eyebrows in, and this is the same in the deaf culture. Likewise, if you wanted to explain to someone to open a book as you were playing a game of charades, how would you act that out? And that's the same sign for a book. Or think about demonstrating that flagpole up on airs or outside of your high school. How would you act that out? You'd probably have the ground and a flagpole and a flag, and that's the sign for flag. It's the same idea for a lot of words in sign language, actually. Like, if you wanted to eat, if something was really large, you would expand your entire body and your entire face. This visual nature makes it easy to communicate with those who don't necessarily sign. Through pantomiming, as well as pointing and other gestures, this would aid your child to communicate outside of those who sign. Now that you know about the visual nature of the language, it's important you understand that sign language has been statistically proven to be a superior form of communication. The 1982 Journal of American Sign Language Studies found that in 2 groups of 5-year-olds, both with hearing loss, the group that signed versus the group who was raised orally, the group that signed had larger vocabularies by more than 400 words on average. It was also found that in the classroom in 2008, the First Language Journal found that in a group of students with hearing losses as well, the group that signed was able to reliably and accurately communicate information over the group that was raised orally. And lastly, in the 1992 Journal of Sign Language Studies, people with hearing loss who rely on sign language say that they have higher grades, higher incomes, and higher levels of self-satisfaction. This self-satisfaction can likely be traced to their involvement with the capital D deaf community. The capital D deaf community offers a unique experience of inclusion and the capital D deaf community offers a unique experience of inclusion and feeling belonging in a predominantly hearing world. The difference in the capital D deaf and the lowercase d deaf is defined by the 1988 book, Deaf in America, as the involvement in the deaf community and the use of sign language, whereas the lowercase d deaf is simply the medical state. There are key characteristics of deaf culture, just like there is of any other language group. Those 3 characteristics are given by Irene Lee in her 2017 book, Deaf Culture. Those 3 characteristics are the use of sign language, viewing deafness as a positive, and conversing with deaf straightness. Using sign language is a key characteristic of the capital D deaf community. Though they may have hearing aids or cochlear implants, they tend to sign more than they communicate orally. Likewise, they view deafness as a positive. It's not a disability, but most refer to it as a different life experience. And the 3rd key characteristic that defines the deaf community is deaf straightness. This is, in English, it's extreme openness in conversation. It's being able to ask who you were with last night or where you're going tomorrow. But I couldn't ask you that in English. There's nothing too personal or too off limits in deaf culture. This unique community this will give your child instant belonging.
Okay, stop for a second. We're going to come right back to that. I think you would also benefit from breathing in between a sentence, having some more pauses.
Okay. Where would you, just like at the end of each body point, or like where would you say to put that to not be awkward? Wherever I need air.
Yeah, just continue to soften and breathe, and don't be afraid to have a pause.
Okay.
Okay? So just try it. Experiment.
Okay. The 3rd key characteristic of signing with your child is they communicate with deaf straightness. This in English is extreme openness in conversation, where nothing is too personal to ask. I could ask who you were with last night or why you were sick yesterday, and no one would look at you funny. Whereas in English, I'd probably get some stares. But try to make it more conversational too, because last time it was so statistic.
Yeah. Channel some of that relaxation, and I know it's probably not natural for you. Some deep breathing, maybe even before you start, could benefit you.
Okay.
Just to really, because you have to think relaxed. Then it will sort of come out within your body.
Okay.
Okay, so just practice or fool around with that.
Okay. Extreme openness. And this unique characteristic is what will help give your child belonging. In a predominantly hearing world, having a group of people who understand and they share traits can do wonders for your child. In summary, sign language is a visually perceived language with statistical proof of superiority and an instant community. There are 2 great local resources. That I recommend you getting involved with. Right now, you can get involved with the Knoxville Center of the Deaf or the Tennessee School of the Deaf, both within a short drive of our meeting place today. I also encourage you to start signing with your child as soon as possible, and I will give you the skills to do that at the end of this presentation. Right now, your child is in the prelingual phase, and unlike hearing children, they have no exposure to communication. Hearing children are exposed to sound from birth, whereas your child right now has no concept of that. So the sign I want to teach you today is for finish. Your child can use this when they're done eating or done playing. So how you sign finish is you open your palms and you shake them once, and that's the sign for finish. So I thank you for your time. I hope you begin to sign with your child, and I am